listen, I don't know, I'll let you know in a moment. I don't know what Miss Nikki has taught you or told you about what we're teaching right now.
I didn't.
Okay, that's fine. Let's pray and then I'll give her a quick overview and we'll get into this next lesson. All right, Lord, thank you for the time tonight. Pray that you would just bless it. Thank you for your word. Thank you for the power of it, that it can stand on its own. Lord, I pray that you just open our minds, help us to hear from you tonight. Yes, in Jesus' name, amen. So, Hannah, what we do typically on Sundays is we go over a lot of theological stuff, true Bible study, if you will, or book writing. On Wednesdays, we do a lot of apologetics. And you might go, you guys are apologizing? And what's funny is that tonight's lesson is a very interesting one for you to be coming in brand new. So we'll get into that in a moment. But apologetics is where we give a defense of our faith. Why do we believe what we believe? What are the answers to some of the difficult questions? You'll see some questions on the board. Where did I come from? Where am I going to? What is the meaning and purpose of life? How do I reconcile right and wrong? All sorts of questions. And right now, on Wednesday nights, we are engaged in a series, basically going over questions that every Christian should be ready to answer. That's what we're studying on. Tonight, we're continuing our series, our sub-series, if you will, and it's basically the first part of the series was arguments for the existence of God. And then right now we're going over arguments against.
So when people come and say, I have proof there isn't a God, this is how you would address.
How do you look at that and respond to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not trying to convince you there's no God.
That's why I say this is a very interesting night for you to jump in on the first one. Tonight's discussion is going to be fun for sure, but just a reminder, we've covered the problem of evil. We've looked at the problem of incoherence, the argument from non-belief. A couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, we did the argument from science. And then tonight, all of you will be very happy that you don't have to worry about shaving tomorrow. Occam's razor.
Oh my God.
Actually, I forgot to today.
Been there, done that. Now, this is a most interesting argument. I think it personally, of the ones up there, it's probably one of the weakest. All right. When you get a person that talks about this and wants to get into some of these things, and I know some of you are going, well, what's Occam's razor? Coming to a slide near you, but this argument is really, in and of itself, very weak. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have merit, but it doesn't have near the merit that some atheists would like you to think it has. All right, so there's other areas. The problem of evil is a whole lot more worthy of debate than I think Occam's razor. So, without further ado, let us get into this. So, the argument from Occam's razor, also known as the law of parsimony, and that's how you pronounce it, is a principle that suggests when faced with competing hypotheses or explanations for a phenomenon, the simplest one is usually the correct one. In essence, it encourages choosing the explanation that requires the fewest assumptions or entities. Things that make you go,
Well, that makes like logical sense. The more assumptions you have in a situation, the more variation you're going to have.
Okay, that is one of those things, and he's nailed it. But what can we say about assumptions?
You tend to make something out of you and me.
Yep. So are they always reliable?
No.
Well, that's why you end up with so much variation possible in the
That's correct.
final answer.
That is correct. So this automatically starts out with a, notice how I spelled Occam down below. I will talk about that in a moment. Occam's razor states that entities should not be multiplied unnecessarily, which means that so long as a given solution does not contradict the facts, the simplest answer is usually best. What did Occam say?
Well, actually, he didn't say anything. But
Well, duly noted.
he's falsely attributed with.
Yeah. And I didn't really make note. Whoa. Give me a moment, guys. Sorry about that. So, that's another keyword. And Josh is right. We're going to talk more about Occam in just a moment. But the key that I want you to remember is that the premise on this, it starts out on shaky ground. It was not designed really to be an argument for a strong argument against the existence of God. You could use it maybe to support one of the other ones. Remember a couple weeks ago that we talked about the argument from science, and where was Occam's razor? It was listed in that one. And I said I wanted to do a separate lesson on this, and I do. And the reason is I really don't believe this should even be used. You really can refute this pretty quickly. All right, let's give a little background. So, where did Occam's razor come from? Well, William of Occam, and yes, I spelled that correctly. Where is Occam from? Based on the spelling.
It looks very Semitic, but I'm going to assume we're talking in the British Isles.
Yes.
Yeah, my first thought was ham hock.
Ham hock.
What? Why is it?
He lived from 1280 to 1349, and guess what he was? He was a monk. Now, it's really interesting that this is attributed to him. Does anybody know why?
I don't remember why. I just remember that he's not really the originator.
Occam believed in grace only. He believed in scripture only, along with a few other things, and he also went against the Catholic Church. And guess who got excommunicated? And it's because he really believed strongly in these things. And we're talking about what? Hey, Miss Judy.
Please take this time to silence all cell phones and electronics. Thank you for your cooperation.
You wouldn't believe where that's coming from. Oh, yes.
Who is it?
I wonder. Nope. Your mom. That's a side conversation. Okay, so he was a Franciscan monk. All right. And he was a great theologian and a philosopher. By the way, I think we've talked about this before. Let's cover this one more time. We always start with what? Say theology.
Theology.
Yes, thank you. Theology, which should inform our what?
Philosophy.
Thank you. Which should inform our what? Culture. Thank you, Mrs. Pomeroy. Which should inform our politics, and last but not least, economics.
Which informs our producer.
Now, where does the world like to start? Right there.
Base values.
Yeah.
Particulars instead of the universals.
Okay, now there's the phrase that I needed. Because if you're going to be a great theologian, what must you understand first?
Theology?
Yes, but
Your funding only comes if you believe in the liberal ideas. Oh wait, sorry. Nope, sorry.
He's not getting
Stop.
USAID.
you got to be well grounded in the universals.
Until recently, I could have got a grant for Jesus was a transfer studies.
Stop.
Until recently.
Have I got to boot him out of here? I mean,
Not again.
Again.
golly. Now, so he was a great theologian, great philosopher. By the way, he was very instrumental in influencing, I want to say Luther. I want to say Martin Luther. So just take that for what you will. But he was a great theologian and philosopher. Okay. His views were not viewed favorably by papal hierarchy, obviously. And, uh-oh, I didn't change my slide. Oh, I did it twice. Oh, that was bad. Okay, here's the pitfalls of this argument. Simplicity doesn't guarantee truth.
Well, it wasn't even Occam's intent.
No, duly noted.
And I'm sorry, to assume that it's more natural for there not to be something, a first cause than there is to have an eternal universe is to make an assumption. You have to make an assumption, which is by definition a worldview game.
Did everybody follow that?
You're making an assumption.
Yes, but what is he saying? Say that one more time, if you would, please.
If you're going to assume that naturalistic causes, which ultimately infer that there's a universal, or let me rephrase that, a infinite universe that has always existed, whether it's in a singularity or it's not in a singularity, but it in itself is self-sustaining. You have to make the assumption that that is less complex than something created and started the engine of the universe. You have to assume that.
Which requires what?
What?
Doesn't the Big Bang Theory, isn't that all based on assumption?
No. The Big Bang itself is actually, if we as Christians have always believed the universe had a start.
Yes.
Up until 5 minutes ago, i.e. 1950s, 1960s, 1900s, it was widely assumed by the secular humanist that the universe was eternal.
Yes.
So now that we've looked at redshift and we've looked at the way stars are in the galaxy, like, okay, we had to have a start, and it was a hot and fast start, and it was all just boom into existence, kind of like God spoke it. But don't let me stop you. Now we have to assume that it has to be 14 billion years. Now it's 20 billion years, and it's going to keep going on and on. So actually, it's amazing. They're kind of coming to our court. The secular humanist is. But again, they're making the assumption there is no God. There is no God. There is no start.
Right. So that, in a sense, the intelligent design, I know it started somehow. There's intelligence behind it, but I'm not going to label it.
I don't think they would agree with the intelligent design issue.
So
They want to stay away from that as much as they
you've got a
can.
50-50 split on that. You've got some people now going to intelligent design, but where did that intelligent design came from? Then there's a whole bunch of hand
Yep.
waving and this gesture happening.
That's
Further
time.
back, time and more
more
and
time.
it happened longer ago. We don't know where from, and it still doesn't explain the eternity of the universe. It's still naturalistic causes. So the universe is still, in their model, it slings out into existence, and then it comes to a singularity, then slings out into existence, and then collapses back into a singularity again.
Okay.
So it's not that nothing exploded; it's that the universe is in this cycle of explosions forever and ever.
Okay, simplicity doesn't guarantee truth. That's true. Subjectivity in defining simplicity. Remember, we always want to have definitions. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Reality is often complex. That'll be a fun one to talk about. Assumptions can be misleading. Hello. Doesn't apply well to certain fields. Kind of relates back to the third one there. It's a heuristic, not a law. I know. Ask it. Go ahead. Oh,
Mr.
nobody's.
Charlie, what's a heuristic?
Thank you. It's a guideline. It's a guideline. So this whole thing, this whole notion of Occam's razor is not a law. It's not even a hypothesis. It's just a guiding principle. Okay? All right. Simplicity does not equal truth. Just because an explanation is simpler doesn't mean it is correct. Nature and reality can be complex, and sometimes a more intricate explanation is the right one. We'll get into some of these in just a moment, but for the moment, let's go ahead and take a look at Psalm 92, verse 5. If somebody could get that for me, and proceed to read. Psalm 92, verse 5.
How great are your works, O Lord?
Oh, louder, please.
How great are your works, O Lord? Your thoughts are very deep.
Now, I love the way that reads. That's out of which translation there?
Out of, it's like the International Version, NIV.
Okay. All right.
I think it's the same, mine is the KJV.
Go ahead.
Same thing. Oh Lord, how great are thy works, and thy thoughts are very deep.
Very deep. Not depth. Complex. Simplicity does not equal truth. Sometimes simple is true, but not always. Let's take a look at this. Psalm 40, verse 5. If somebody could get that one. Psalm 40, verse 5.
You have multiplied, O Lord my God, your wondrous deeds and your thoughts towards us. None can compare with you. I will proclaim and tell them, yet they are more than can be told.
I want to be careful here. Because this, maybe I shouldn't ask the question. Is God simple?
How are you? It depends. I mean, not really, but some of the things that he does are very simple.
Any disagreement? That's actually pretty well said.
Write that down. Get credit for that.
Which part?
Someone take the date down.
February
You
the
could say
5th.
he can be simple,
Mm-hmm.
but he's also unfathomably complex.
Yeah.
But he can be simple in conveying things to us sometimes.
And if you get into a discussion with somebody about Occam's razor, and by the way, they're not just going to come out and say, well, I believe in Occam's razor. That's not what they're going to do. Well, I believe in simplicity. You know, the simpler things are, that's really where we should be. If you're not careful, you're going to make statements like the question I just asked, and guess what they're going to say? So you do believe in Occam's razor. Because it can go both ways. So you want to be careful with this in terms of how you speak it and how you refute it. Define.
Anybody actually like use it as like their worldview?
I would agree.
I've only heard people say that, you know, this idea that there's a God and that he's outside of time, space, and matter and all this. I mean, wouldn't it just be simpler? Wouldn't it just be a simpler explanation if this is how nature happened to be? And so Occam's razor, then they'll use that. They'll say the puddle argument fits Occam's razor better than your design argument. They'll use default to push another argument.
Yep.
And it's like, well, the puddle argument is stupid. That's a preschooler argument.
Yep.
But go ahead and try it.
How would one go about defining simplicity? I'm not asking you to define that. Okay? But for the sake of, if you get in a discussion with somebody about this, guess what you have to ask? Well, how would you define simpler?
You'd have to go back to the definition of Occam's razor itself, and whichever one has the fewest amount of assumptions. The more and more I have to assume to make that be, the more complex that it's going to be.
But I would not expect them to go back to that. I would expect them to just simply use the definition without getting into that. In other words, if they're going to make a definition off of simplicity, I think they'll use it in a way that John Arthur just said. Wouldn't it be easier or simpler, or how much easier is it to believe? That's I think where they would go. How about this? How would a physicist define simple? Oh, wait, I got a better one. How about a biologist?
I gave up.
Well, I'm not going to tell you because I'm not sure I can even come up with it. But how about a philosopher?
So you're asking these questions, but you don't know how to define them yourself?
No, I did not say that. I did not. Did you hear me say that?
I'm trying to for you.
Uh,
I don't want you to be talking over my head.
No, think about it. You're having a discussion with somebody that wants to tell you, wouldn't it be easier to believe in the puddle argument? Who are you talking to?
I don't either.
Me neither. So I'll just give you the puddle argument for a second. The puddle argument is that a puddle will naturally, adhere to the bumps underneath the surface. So like if you have a rocket jaggy chip in the concrete, a puddle will conform perfectly to that structure, almost like it was designed for it. So like our assumption that the universe is special and that information exists, it really only comes from us thinking that we're like a puddle in the water, and because there's complexity of the base of the puddle, the bottom floor of it, therefore that complexity is not really complexity, it's just noise, and we are the ones that are imputing sense onto it.
It's really
But that's a
whacked
stupid
out.
argument.
It is.
That's actually pretty complex.
Right?
I don't even
Right?
think that's simple.
Because you come down to it and you say, well, wait a minute. If there were no humans on Earth, what about the second law of thermodynamics? Did that exist before humans were here to impute that rationale on the universe? Because that's information. When was the last time you saw self-organizing, useful information?
That's the problem. Nobody knows the second law.
That's right.
You've never thrown a Scrabble book up into the air and gotten a completed game, right? So
That's
no
actually
one,
where you get that Gibbs free energy equation. That derives from the second law of thermodynamics.
Yep.
But most people don't even know real science, so
right.
they make arguments not from science to do these. They make them from bad logic.
So let me do this. Don't go there yet, but we're going to in a moment. Here's what I want. I want to go back to Nikki's question. Let's do this. How would a physicist define simple when looking at a rock compared to a child? And that is like really basic. How would a physicist look at that?
Probably would have, something about how the earth was formed and formed this rock and all that process of
And what would a child say?
it's a rock.
The definition of simplicity matters when you're talking to a person that does not believe in God. When they want to make an argument, isn't it simpler? The issue becomes, okay, who are we talking to? What are we talking about? We can't necessarily approach it the same way. A physicist is way above a child when it comes to a rock. So what definition of simple do we use? It's impossible. Does that make sense?
So what you're saying is that when they're quote unquote,
How about time? How would a physicist look at time compared to a child,
well, he's
a 10-year-old?
He's gonna input all of his knowledge that he's learned about time, whereas a child is just been told it's time.
How does a physicist see time? What do they see it as?
I don't know.
A dimension. How does a child see time?
I didn't spend much time thinking about it.
Experientially.
Experientially. Yeah. Let's look at Isaiah 55:8. If I could get somebody to read that. Isaiah 55:8.
For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord.
Kind of lines up with those previous verses that we looked at.
But go to 9. You have to read 9 today.
Go ahead.
For as the heavens are higher than yours, so are my ways higher than your ways.
Ooh.
My thoughts.
Yeah. Defining the terms. Okay. Let's keep going. How about reality and simplicity? Prioritizing simplicity can lead to oversimplification, ignoring important details or nuances. Would agree with that. Let's read Hosea 14, verse 9. Can I get somebody to get that one? You got it for me there, Luke.
Whoever is wise, let
Yep.
him understand these things. Whoever is discerning, let him know them. For the ways of the Lord are right, and the upright walk in them. Transgressors stumble in them.
I love it. Good verse. Okay. Assumptions can be misleading. They absolutely can. Let me ask you where. Give me some areas.
Well, I tell you what, when you work in the accounting department and you make assumptions, you can get in a lot of
Oh,
trouble.
wow. Wow. Oh boy.
Oh, in the ER. That would
What was that?
She said.
Holy cow. Please don't make an assumption in the ER. Trying not to? Is that what you do as nursing? Thank you. Appreciate you doing that. No, that, boy, That can kill somebody. How about other areas?
You know, let me just share this because it's the same principle. When you make an assumption,
Mhm.
like, it influences, like in my department, when I make a mistake, which I did today,
You what?
I made a mistake, and so the person.
Somebody
that I
write that
sent the
down.
Information
You got it,
to,
Mr. Charlie.
she didn't get all the information, and so she made a
Copy,
mistake. And then the person she sent that information to, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and the thing is, the further you get away from the center of that, the exponentially worse it gets.
But we make a lot of assumptions.
We do.
We assume when we go somewhere, we're going to come back. We assume.
Ooh. Ooh. How about in crime? I don't think I'd want a detective making an assumption if I'm the one that's being looked at as being guilty.
How about your theology?
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Your
Wow.
Your worldview.
That's huge.
How about your relationships? Start with your husband and wife relationship. Go with your children. Go with your parents.
Yeah, you can make a lot of assumptions and get you in trouble.
Talk about your assumptions of God.
She will be okay with X, and then you say X, and then you do X, and that
Yeah.
work.
For all
Not
the
really.
jokes
That's right.
about daddy issues or mommy issues, the truth of the matter is your view of your parents shapes your view of God, because God ordained those positions for those purposes of providing you with an outlook
Good thoughts.
on the relationship he meant you to have with him.
That's good stuff. Occam's razor suggests minimizing assumptions, but sometimes adding an assumption leads to a more accurate explanation. That's why this is not a law. Because sometimes adding complexity is right. What's the ultimate goal? What are we looking for? That's it. That's exactly right. We are looking for truth. So, if this is the overall goal, then we've got to make sure we employ the right means to get there. All right. Quantum mechanics and general relativity are both complex, but necessary to explain reality. I would agree with that. Proteins, genes, and DNA are all complex, but necessary to explain life. Go ahead. Explain the flagellum motor, please.
Well, you see, when you mutate flies,
No.
they're going to eventually have a flagellum.
No, that was a rhetorical question.
Flagellum is a deformed body part from a less complex creature. I'm not meaning to make fun of anyone. I'm just saying that I'll make fun of the idea all day long.
Yes.
The flagellum is a mutation of a less complex creature that somehow irreducibly complex is working.
Yep.
Oh, and by the way, reproduces.
Yes.
Never seen.
Isaiah 53:6. Let's look at that. My darling, my darling.
All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all.
And I think Josh is right. We've made a lot of assumptions. Book of Proverbs, I believe. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Yep. So assumptions can be misleading. And I think Nikki brings up a really great point. the further you move away from the center of your assumption, the more magnified that issue becomes. All right. Doesn't apply well to certain fields. I would agree. How about the field of psychology? That's a hard one.
That's what I got my bachelor's degree in, was psychology.
No way.
Yeah.
I tell people that go through psychology classes, do not mess with my head. You leave me alone. And you want to know what's funny? It's almost every degree that you get, every major, guess what you have to take? Really?
I took it anyway.
Did you really? You wanted to mess with people's heads, huh?
We're gonna take the psychology like 101, which is really just a huge vocabulary test.
Like, it's a major factor, especially when you're working in hospitals, because there's a lot of mental health that comes.
See, and I'm going to be honest with you, I was really surprised you said not for a nursing degree. Because guess where I would expect you to have to take it? Nursing. I absolutely would.
Just give them a shot. They seem really give them a shot.
Like, they teach us how to handle it in the actual classes, but
Yep.
they don't. But in the psychology classes, they teach us why and
Yes.
what to actually do.
Yep.
Instead of just telling us strap them down or give them a shot.
That's got to be hard to strap somebody down to do that kind
Not
of stuff.
tiny.
Yeah. So psychology, my point is that it's a complex field. It's not simple. It's dealing with how people think and behave. Human behavior. Crime detectives. Let's take a look at Daniel chapter 4, verse 37. Daniel 4:37. Good friend Daniel.
Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven.
Whoa, I'm sorry. Say what? Read that again.
Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven.
Keep going.
Because everything he does is right and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble.
I wonder came to that conclusion.
Was he once full of pride? He
was speaking from experience. He really was. Yeah, simplicity. Man, how would you apply it there? Well, let me guess. I did something.
Moving your mic.
Oh, I'm working at it.
Yeah,
I'm literally.
you're doing a good job.
Well, we're getting different mics. I know that. Yep. No, he was speaking from experience. He absolutely was. When it comes to simplicity being the better explanation, Nebuchadnezzar took a really long journey to get to that point. A very long journey. Okay, let's keep moving. It's not a universal law. It helps in hypothesis selection, but it doesn't prove anything. So it should not be looked at as such. Let's read Charlie, new book in the
Proverbs.
Bible. Well done.
Prover?
Provers. Let's look at Provers. Chapter 21, verse 8.
Everyone get out your message Bibles.
Oh,
We're trying to prove something.
we're trying to prove something. We're going to look in the book of Provers. Who's got that?
I do.
Have at it.
The way of man is forward and strange, but as for the pure, his work is right.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm.
Now, what does the word forward there mean?
Froward, evil.
Yep. It is FROW, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Evil. The way of the evil. Read it again.
The way of man is forward
Is evil.
and strange, but as for the pure, his work is right. The next
Psalm
one
20
does not apply to you. Just better to do it in the corner of a house top. You know what? It doesn't apply.
You're killing my class.
I know nothing. I love the Charlie and Nikki show.
So, Psalm 21:10. Who's got that one?
Their fruit shalt thou destroy from the earth, and their seed from among the children of men.
Is that Psalm 21:10?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Did you pull a me?
I pulled a John Arthur. I do believe.
Wow.
Slipped up in your.
Wow.
of your
What
notes.
amateur did that?
The one who went to Proverbs.
Yeah. So the Catholics had their Deuterocanon, the second
Yeah.
canon. This is the third canon.
Yes.
We'll put it in at Vatican III when that comes around.
All right. So let's kind of sum this up. Occam's razor. The idea that the more simpler, sorry, that wasn't supposed to happen. My bad. The simpler that something is usually the better explanation. That's not true. It's not true. And hopefully I've given you some things to think about there. Next week, it's 7:16 and it's time to go. Where are we going tonight?
What?
Whataburger.
He can't go get his kids. His kids will shoot him.
Well, that's his fault for arming him, but I mean, that he is.
Next week, the Euthyphro dilemma. Uh-huh. Go ahead. Google it. Google it. The Euthyphro dilemma. There we go.
Bless you.
EUTH.
Quite the lisp you got there
Yeah.
for saying
Euthyphro.
or something else. I don't know. I
I can only say it once. Don't ask me to do it again. That'll be next week. And then we'll have one more after that. And that will conclude this part of the arguments against God. All right. And then I'm probably going to spend a few weeks, 2-3 weeks, on what translation should I be reading? I'm sorry. What translation do I want to personally read? There we go. That's the way to word that. All right. That'll be a fun discussion. Good things for you. Yep. No, it will be. It will be.
But you know what? The Occam's razor, as a heuristic, though, it does make sense for, like, if you have many things before you and you have to choose something, you know,
But be careful not to oversimplify.
Yeah, probability-wise, though, you know, kind of like, you know, if I'm angry that you're looking into the finances of USAID,
Ow.
it could be because I'm getting money from
Oh.
it. That would be like a simple explanation, not because, you know.
Cut the tape. Cut the tape.
But with like
fine.
a lot of things, like if you're sitting there trying to, you know, we're saying like detectives.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm a detective and I got to think like, okay, I've got all these different things I can check on. I'm going to
Yeah.
check the simplest thing
Sure.
first. So you know,
Yep.
it is a useful heuristic,
Yep.
something like that. And then I, you know, might have to work my way back up to
Yep.
the more complex.
But you also need to apply that, like you're saying, to institutional forces whenever you're talking about deciding a worldview.
Yes.
Because
Absolutely agree.
I'm dealing with this right now. I've got a situation at work, where there's a significant amount of, for these there's a couple companies involved, and there's an invention, and there's a significant amount of impetus to prove that the invention works, because there's a lot of money coming to back this up. The impetus is not to say that there's a problem with your testing methodology. And
Yeah.
so, because the moment you say that my testing methodology, radiometric dating, or carbon dating, or
Whatever it is.
any of these other things that you're doing, if those are bad, or if those have a potential pitfall, and you have an issue with your methodologies, it's better to just sort of wave over, because you're going to lose your funding.
Yep.
And it is not a uncommon problem.
Yeah.
It happens in every industry.
Mhm.
It is so much easier to kick the can down the road.
Yep.
And so, I know that Ariel's listening to this. Love you, Garel. I'm just saying, I do think that it sometimes you have that. We'll have that discussion in person, but it is a common issue in the medical field, in the scientific community. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yep.
There's an impetus, and sometimes that is the simplest answer why someone came up with an idea, because there's money involved.
Anything else? Anybody? I was thinking Freddy's tonight.
Let's go to Freddy's.
All in favor of Freddy's, say aye.
I
Aye. All opposed? Hush. Vote has been carried. All right. That's where we're going. Freddy's it is. Appreciate you guys being here. Look forward to seeing you. Sunday, we start the book of Esther. Really interesting book. Trivia time. Name the one book that does not mention God.
Esther.
Really interesting study. Hope you'll be here.
Direct.
Not directly.
But it's
Strongly implied.
It's
well, but
clear.
not only that, but it's also there in acrostic and other ways.
Yes. Yes. Great study on the book of Esther coming.
So how did they decide to include that?
Oh, nailing the questions before we even get to them. I love it. It's actually a great, that is a great question.
You know, it's the only book that's not found in the Dead Sea Scroll catch.
We are going to discuss that.
There's a couple of
Yeah.
potential reasons for that. But
Yep. It's the natural question. It really is. How can you include a book that does not mention God in a canon about God?
Has to do with God speaking to and working through his people. But
Which, golly, we just finished a series on that. Amazing.
it's almost like it was planned.
Almost like it was planned. Great
It's
stuff.
an interesting book because it goes back to David and Saul, because one guy there is there because Saul didn't do what he was supposed to do.
Yep.
And
Yep.
And
Yep.
one guy is there because David showed mercy to somebody.
Yep.
So, it's strange.
We'll have a fun
I'll
one.
let you figure out who those are.
Let's pray. We will be dismissed. Lord, thank you for this great time that we've had here together tonight. Pray that these things that we've been learning, they would be taken in and used when appropriate. Help us to be defenders of the faith. Help us to know why we stand where we stand, to be able to articulate it. Pray that you bless each and every one. Pray that you watch over them as they go home. And Lord, as we get ready to head down to Freddy's for a few minutes, I pray that you just bless that food there and the time of fellowship. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen and amen.